Hello, good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are. My name's Aaron Roberts, aka Aaron CTI, and I'm really thrilled today to welcome Agent G9 from the YouTube scam baiting community. He's got a fascinating talk for us lined up about how they're using open source intelligence to identify and then combat scammers online and save hundreds of millions of dollars per year. Agent G9, hello, welcome.
Thank you very much for having me.
I'm super pumped. I've got a couple of questions for you lined up.
Yeah,
Um, So a couple of, but we'll do a couple of questions now, and then we'll get into a presentation, and then I'm sure off the back of that, the audience will have some questions, and I've probably got a couple more that'll really help us going further in. First question I really want to know is, how do you get involved in scam baiting? Because I know I've watched a lot of videos on YouTube. I've seen all the guys do all different things, and it's super fascinating to me. But I wonder, like, what is it that makes somebody go from like just somebody's on the computer one day to fighting scammers day to day?
yeah. So the way I got involved was when someone in my family actually fell victim to the scam, and I decided to, look into what happened and try trace back and investigate it myself, since it was obvious that nothing was getting done with when we reported it to the banks or law enforcement. So I started to get into the cybersecurity world. I started to learn different things. And yeah, that's basically how I begun. And I've been doing it probably for about 2 to 3 years now. Um, just educating myself over time, learning different things such as how to use Kali Linux, how to code on Python, how to use Metasploit, Meterpreter, all of these things on Kali, and just a whole range of different things, I guess, from network scanning all the way to malware and inspecting malware and how to do what I need to do to get access to a scammer and investigate who they are.
That's super fascinating. So my background is in cybersecurity and cyber threat intelligence. So like hearing a lot of what you do in Forces for Good is really interesting to me because usually that my day job
Yeah,
is doing the opposite. um, but I think it's really interesting to see how all these pieces come together and how you can do this in a way that is effectively saving people from terrible crimes. I know when we talked before, you mentioned there are instances where people either commit suicide or are very close to doing so until you can step in. And I think that
yeah,
that's one of those pieces of information that's very, very useful and very like powerful because when you talk about scams, and a lot of the time people go, I don't know how you would fall for this Nigerian prince saying you'll get millions of dollars. But there is such a real world impact that I think a lot of people don't really understand. And I think
correct. Yeah,
you really touch on it by saying, I know somebody personally in my life that's important to me that fell victim and I had to do something,
yeah,
especially when like law enforcement lets you down.
yeah. Well, I guess in some cases they let you down, but it kind of depends because they never really started working with us until recently, and it's only specific law enforcement from certain countries that work with us, right?
Yeah,
But I guess now they're more willing to work with us, and we have a means of how to work with them with the legal jurisdictions as well. That may be a problem. So it looks like it's getting better between ethical hackers, white hat hackers, and law enforcement.
no, for sure. That's really pleasing to hear as well. So I think
Yeah,
although there are lines when it comes to legalities, some would say ethics as well. I think there's a
yeah,
very fine line between forces for good and forces for bad. So doing this for the right way and working with the right agencies, I think, is a really important point as well. So one of the things that I've really like to understand as well is like how long do these cases usually take? Is it something that you do usually quite quickly? Do they run on for months, sometimes years?
so it kind of depends on the situation, right? I had a case which I reported in early early September, and I think it got packaged up and sent off to the right law enforcement in about a month. But before that, there was another case which I reported in, it must have been May. And then the scammers did get arrested in July or August. So sometimes law enforcement could look into a scam and they could say, hey, we found even more people working with these people at a different location, or they could network a different operation from the same people, maybe through phone numbers or through mutual contacts. And they end up finding out that the call center we have is actually way bigger than expected. For us, the investigation, I think it's just a means of collecting information and sending it off. It's quite fast and easy, but we don't want to send any false information or any wrong information over.
Yeah, of
So
course.
getting the location needs to be, we don't want to send them the wrong location. Getting victim information and how much a victim has lost, getting the name of suspects, etc. We don't want to send no false information over. So I think it varies between, it's normally a couple of months, I guess.
That's really interesting. And is your part of that also like a couple of months, or does it really just depend on each like investigation, I guess?
It depends on the investigation. I'd say a couple of weeks it would take us, but then collecting um, active victims who are getting scammed and collecting information on these active victims may take maybe a month or two to get enough of them to where we say, okay, we have enough victims to give statements over. Let's
That
send
makes
them over
sense.
to the, yeah,
No, for sure. It's super interesting. And you already mentioned like law enforcement increasingly more cooperative.
yeah,
I'd had questions sort of lined up, which if you find like with yourself and other scam baiters, if they are traditionally helpful, but I think you already
yeah.
answered it. Like, it's really dependent on jurisdiction, the country, and I guess also if you turn around and you've got a case on a silver platter, here are the victims, here are the people that have done it, here's a load of evidence. Like, it should be fairly easy, you would hope. But I guess obviously sometimes they'll turn around and just ignore you or just not respond fast enough.
Yeah, my experience with law enforcement has been, I'd say it's been good overall. We've had people responding to us and willing to take some cases on. In most part, law enforcement in corrupt countries and economically not as built countries or countries that have political problems going on aren't really as as eager to get something taken on, right? Such as a recent case I did with South Africa. We went through about 4 or 5 different officers and talking with them, trying to persuade them, hey, take a look at this, let's get something done. But then eventually we got onto someone who's been at the Hawks for 20 years in South Africa. And he was like, hey, I'm willing to work with you boys. Let's get this done. Let's get these people arrested. So I think, yeah, my experience with law enforcement has been good, to be honest.
That's that's really heartwarming. I think
Yeah.
for me at least. So that's great. I think let's go straight into your presentation. I think because I think it's just going to be super interesting and really fascinating how you're leveraging all these different tools and techniques and methods to identify and capture all these bad villains.
Right. So, let me just hide this. You can see the screen, correct?
Yeah, that always all looking good to me.
Okay, so with OSINT investigations, there are different things we do in terms of getting from the starting line to the finish line, right? Different tools, different methods, and different techniques that we would implement in an investigation, and just depending on whatever we can get from a scammer, right? So one big thing is Bitcoin analysis. Um, Most of the time, law enforcement do this themselves, but in some cases, we get interested in, okay, there's an amount of Bitcoin here. Let's see where it ends up. Normally, we would just use Blockchain Explorer, but there's also this cool tool called Breadcrumbs, which I know loads of investigations get used with. And this is just a quick map out of one of the people that we did get arrested and how I think law enforcement did trace the Bitcoin. We didn't do any tracing ourselves. So the victim's address was one of these, which got sent to the scammer over here. And this is basically the amount that was lost. So about 1 Bitcoin. And they sent it outwards, right? So normally when a scammer sends out his or her Bitcoin, it would go through different channels and it'd be hard to trace back. But in this case, because we have a clear map of where the Bitcoin went through the different wallets, we can see it did go to one, two, three, four, five different wallets. However, this one VE, this was the main one that was linked to the scammer. And this was the one on the police report, the court report, which was linked to his name. And you can see that it all ties back to a Binance exchange.
I
I
guess
think
it's at
this is,
that point where law enforcement would come in, and because they can do all
yeah.
the subscriber checks and get that information.
Yeah, so I think they put a request. It's called a law enforcement request or something. And they were able to find the Binance linked to this wallet, which took the funds from the initial victim over here. Um, so this was good as, you can get the names of the main individuals involved or some people who are doing money laundering on their behalf. But sometimes it's not even their main, like they would make someone else open a wallet and use someone else. So in this case, seeing this on the police report was quite outstanding. And the amount of Bitcoin that this guy's Binance has received, 49 BTC, I think it said about $800,000 at the time. So this is one tool that we do use. But as I said, normally we don't do all of this ourselves, but it is pretty cool and interesting to look at. Aside from that, you can also use Blockchain Explorer and just trace it back manually, which is much more easier, I guess. But breadcrumbs is pretty cool. So the next is social catfish, who's like a friend of mine, right? And he has a reverse, it's like a reverse face search. So let me just show you real quick. So you put in the name, or you can put someone's email in, or their phone number, address, and this is what it basically does. Let me just skip this. So it would get back to you with personal information linked with the address or the phone number, um, all sorts of information. So this is like a reverse search engine tool. So Social Catfish created this for everyone, including normal people, to see if they're a victim of a scam or if they've already been scammed. And it also helps us to determine victims of scams. So when we see a victim of a scam, we put in their name in that tool made by Social Catfish, and it would bring us victim information, or we would put in their number and it would show us the victim information, their address. And this helps us to be able to send law enforcement to the place. And yeah, if we're not using that, there's one which is more specific for just face images called PIM eyes. When I put in this scammer's face on PIM eyes, we were able to get all of his social medias, LinkedIn profiles, Instagram profiles. As it scans, I think it's a couple tens of thousands of pixels on the face, and it searches the whole Google search engine, and it matches with social media profiles, etc. So this is one of the people that we did get an investigation on in my previous video, who was the boss of a call center. And using PIM, I was able to see his LinkedIn profile matching his face, which I did send off to law enforcement to take a look at. And they were able to get his name and whereabouts he lived. um, his previous jobs, previous employment. There was quite a lot they did get from just, using someone's face and facial images and scanning their facial recognition, basically. And finally, Yandex. This is more for kind of the people who aren't on the Google search engine, right? So Yandex is built on, I think it's built on it's built on like Russian algorithm, and it uses it's just built entirely different compared to Google, including the services it gives as well. There's more services which Google doesn't have. And it's good to find information which isn't always on the Google web. Sometimes it's on Yandex compared to, most scammers we would just find info on Google on them. But sometimes the ones who are international, it's always best to use Yandex because we find quite a lot of stuff on them. And Yandex also has a cool translation tool where you can just paste an image. Let's say we got a Russian scammer or an Indian scammer, and we wanted to translate something that we found in their language. You just paste in the image and it would translate from Hindi to English or the other way around, which is pretty useful in our investigation.
Yeah, I
Don't
can
always
imagine
need to
that's
go get
really
a
powerful.
translator. Yeah.
I think that's a really
So,
important point as well, because I know, like for me as an OSINT investigator, not solely relying on like Google is one of those things
yeah,
you try to like drum into people, especially new people to the field. It's not just Google,
right,
and you can search Google and Bing as I guess another Western example for the same thing and get completely different results. And then when you bring in
correct.
like
Yeah.
Yandex and other tools like that, it's really quite fascinating seeing how different they are and how each of them has their own like benefits and negatives as well.
Yeah, I agree. But yeah, these are free tools which we could use these, and it would greatly impact, especially getting victim information and suspects information, such as this guy over here. I think they're really useful. Without tools like this on the web, we wouldn't be able to get a lot of victim information or information which we could try to find ourselves. We wouldn't be able to do it without tools like this. So these are some cool tools we use. Let me just move on. So victim information, it would look like this. The name, when they were born, the residence, phone numbers. We would normally just give this over to law enforcement and ask them to kindly help, go to the victim's house or call the victim and stop the scam. Another way we get victim information with our OSINT techniques is using the email that is on the fake refund emails which they send the victims. So just a quick background, scammers would use the email spam service and send out all these fake Norton, Amazon, PayPal emails. I'm sure you maybe have got one before. Um, these are more common in the USA, however, and they would attach the victim's email and say, "Hey, your subscription has been renewed. Call us to get this $300 purchase cancelled." We normally find victims opening all of these things on their computers, and we're able to see their emails, which we put into the social catfish website or a different reverse search engine tool and get the information such as this. Another way is by getting the phone numbers of the scammers, calling them on screen. So you'd see the scammers calling the victims on screen. We just swipe the phone numbers and put them in the tool and get the victim information and hand it over to law enforcement or try say them ourselves if we can.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
I've seen a
it's
lot of
quite,
videos where I guess like I think Jim Browning does that a lot, where he phones the victims and
yeah,
tries to, especially if they're like on their way to a bank or to a store, and trying to help them that way.
yeah, correct. So it's a good way to, stop a victim and stop a scam in real time, which is the main thing before money is lost, which could most likely never be recovered again. It's great. We've been able to save hundreds of millions of dollars. collectively as scam betas, probably even close. I'd say probably billions. Well, not billions, but around a billion or more or a bit less. There's been a lot of work done with us and victims, especially people behind the scenes. They also work really hard in saving victims. And yes, it's something really nice to do,
So I guess
helping a victim. Mhm.
on that point around like the numbers involved, um,
Yeah.
do you find that most scam call centers, for example, do they operate at like similar levels when it comes to how much money they're making on like a week or a monthly basis?
Well, I think it kind of depends because a call center could have 100 agents, but if they are doing a light scam and only making, $100 per victim, then they're not doing as much as another call center who may be wiping out a whole victim's, investment account or doing off $100,000 wire transfer in a day. I've seen people in a room of three do more damage than a whole call center with 30 agents. But normally it depends on the level of how sophisticated they are and what scam they're pulling off. I think the Microsoft scams are the worst, and the refund scams that make you take out all your money in your bank and send it over to someone who's going to pick it up, etc. Those are very bad as well. I also know pig butchering scams are quite impactful because they take time and they do a lot of damage over time. So, every week they may do $1,000. Then after 20 weeks, 2, 3 months, whatever it may be, the victims lost probably everything in their bank. So I guess every scam just has a different operation and every scam call center runs a different way.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think the point you just made there around like pig butchering scams, like every time I read an article or watch a video about that subject, like it staggers me like how much money can be made and like how manipulative it is to get a
Yeah,
victim from like that initial contact point to the stage where they've wiped out their entire like life savings, their entire earnings forever. And I think that's where those real risks come in when it comes to like people's health and people's well-being, especially.
yeah, correct. Sorry. Um, Here's an example of, you know, them logging into a victim's Fidelity account. So as we just touched on how much damage they do, well, it also depends on what the victim has, right? So this victim over here has altogether all accounts $59,000 in their Fidelity account, right? So some people in this world, they don't have investments. Some people, they have a lot of investments. Some people have physical assets instead, such as real estate or, you know, gold, whatever it may be. So it depends on the scenario also. I've seen scammers listing victims' tractors up for sale, their cars up for sale, even some houses up for sale. I got a message from my buddy Merwin the other day. Someone made the victim sell one of their houses, which is crazy because it's not the first time we've seen it. But in this case, this victim had investments. So what they would do is they would just liquidate these investments. But in some cases, right, the victim has nothing and the victim's living off social security or in the UK off benefits and they have their final £500 in their account or $500 in their account. And seeing a scammer take the last thing the victim has, right? Sometimes they just take the $500. It may not be $50,000. Seeing them take the last thing a victim has is actually probably one of the worst things that we see. As we know, the victim is left with literally nothing, or even in overdraft sometimes. And it goes back to the point of sometimes I do enjoy saving these big numbers, 50,000, 100,000, $1 million from getting taken from a victim. But also, sometimes it's best if we just focus on the people that have nothing. because their lives are probably going to get ruined the same way or even more than these people that they take from. And at the end of the day, the scammer does, he still gets a lot of money, even if it's $50,000 or $500 in their countries. This is a lot of money. And of course, we don't want them taking 50,000 instead of $500, but I guess looking at the victim's perspective, that's the main thing that we try to do. So we just save everyone, all sorts of victims.
That's a really important point, I think, and like the scope and like the impact that would have on somebody who, like you say, has very little to lose, but that is
Yeah,
everything to them. Versus, you probably have other people that lose $100,000, but the fact that they've had that money available in the first place probably means that they have the means to, recover from that in some way, shape or form.
correct. Yeah. Yeah, I guess someone may be a mother of three, you know, divorced or taking care of the kids by herself, and she could lose her last $500, whereas the millionaire could, he could be living in a family full of millionaires. He may lose 1 million, but his wife's got 2 million in the bank, or his kids have 5 million. So I guess you don't know the scenario. So as I said, we just always save everyone that we can, regardless of the amount of money. And we know it's going to make an impact on someone's life anyway. So yeah, that's the main thing we try to do. One of the main things we try to do, saving victims as much as we can.
Not for sure.
So this is a screenshot from one of the scammers' phones. Sometimes when they're not doing this on the computer, they move the victims onto their phones. However, we do get access to phones and um, all sorts of things, storage and contacts on the phones. And even though they think they're safe, calling victims on the phones, sending them here, there to go take money out, we're still able to see the victim's information on the phone. And here's a little example of what we also do when we hack into someone's phone. So this was a scammer that me, Scammer Payback, and Dan from the UK exposed. He was like a Nigerian. He forged some sort of tax documents, I think, and he impersonated Scammer Payback too. And when I hacked into his phone, I got into his Snapchat and I posted, "I'm a scammer. I like stealing money from innocent victims," of this embarrassing picture of him. And that's just Scammer Payback exposing the guy. So this was some damage that we did do on this guy's phone. Like I said, these scammers think if they use their phones, they're safe, more safe than their computers, or if they use a VPN, they're safe. But it's not the case because either way, we could still get them and do some sort of damage in terms of exposing or getting information from their iPhone storage or Android storage. So this was pretty fun to do.
That's a great
um,
image.
yeah, I think, yeah, this guy was in somewhere in Nigeria. This was a Nigerian scammer. Whereas this guy's in South Africa. Um, yeah, so this was a personal investigation I did on a group called Action and Refund. Now, how I started off was seeing them on their website say, "Get your money back from a scam. If you're a victim of an online scam, contact us for a free consultation." Now, one thing that is clear is you can't get your money, you can't recover crypto from a scam unless you're law enforcement or the bank. These companies that offer these services, they're all they're all something called recovery scammers. So you have an investment scammer that hosts a fake investment page, and then you have a recovery scammer who gets the victims of scams to contact them, and then they say to them, "Yes, we're able to recover all your money for you. All you have to do is pay an upfront fee. We're going to get this case done, and then we'll get your money back." But everyone who's been scammed before falls for this because they're in desperate need to get their money back. And this is a group I did investigate with my buddy Moen again. And we did dive very deep into this group. And some of the OSINT techniques which we did get the location with were these CCTV images. Now, over here on the left, we're able to see some documents, and on all the documents, it had a specific logo, the same as this one, the group Action Refund. It had this logo. Um, as well as this, we were able to look outside the windows on some of the CCTV angles. This showed us the layout of the building, and like there was a car park here and some bushes over here. Um, of course, you get the common thing, the faces and um the different, you can tell these agents are working here. You could try do some investigation into them. But another OSINT technique we did use, which was very obvious, were these quotes on the walls. And all we need to do was look at office spaces to rent or look at public spaces with this sort of art decorated on the wall. Um, so we add all of these things up, and then we also add up the faces. So here's the boss who I did show before of the South Africa call center. And then we would listen into their microphones. We could tell as well from the accent that they were from South Africa. If you can determine a South African accent, then you're good to go. But these were some of the OSINT techniques used to get the location. And we made a map out of the office. So we made like a floor plan. Here's the entrance at the top. Here's the kitchen. This office space had like a specific box in every room that was like just filled with chairs or something. It was like a seating area. And then we were able to point it back to the spaces offices in South Africa. Most of the time, scammers, a lot of the time, sorry, don't have CCTV cameras, which is when we use other techniques, which I can't say on YouTube for specific reasons. But when they don't have cameras, we do use other techniques, and these involve more, not really OSINT, but more ethical hacking operations, and that's how we get their location without CCTV, etc. So
The other
yeah, we
thing
were
with
able to point it back to this. Yeah,
just I think like looking at those pictures you've got, like having quotes from Jordan Belfort on the wall when he went to prison for fraud, I think he's really on the
correct,
nose. Like,
correct. So Jordan Belfort is a scammer, and they had his quotes on the wall, which was pretty funny. I think this was just there was also like a map, or it wasn't a map. I think it was like a big logo on the wall of it's just art and decoration, but that was pretty funny seeing that Jordan Belfort quote.
yeah, like great movie, but let's, let's leave it there.
Yeah, so that's how we got this location. And I think you did ask me about my proudest case, which I did say I did want to share, which was assisting in Operation Chakra 2 and Chakra 3, which was a operation in India which took down many call centers and arrested hundreds of scammers. Um, Let me just quickly go to this article. So this was back in September 2023, and there was Chakra 3 this summer 2024, which took place. So I think about 180 people were busted in 8 call centers across Guwahati, India. Um, yeah, Assam police were the ones who led this investigation, but they were also assisted by CBI, FBI, Interpol. Let's not go into those ads, sorry. Um, so they were basically running fake Microsoft pop-up scams, over here, claiming to be from well-known banks, technical support companies, government agencies, online service providers. They would call up the victim, make them send over money through wire or cash or Bitcoin. Here, Bitcoin and Hawala channels were used. And this is where I showed the Bitcoin map previously on breadcrumbs. So this is one of the owners. His Bitcoin wallet with $800,000 was part of the court report. So they did clean their Bitcoin using some sort of tumbler or mixer, but breadcrumbs just showed me the the end result, right? So the Binance withdrawals. I think most scammers don't realize that Bitcoin is actually traceable and you're able to find a lot of information, even if they think they're going to use a mixer or a Bitcoin washer, they're going to be safe. So this was probably 8 call centers raided, and you see them in these pictures on the floor. This was probably one of my proudest cases in India because we did shut down loads of people who were doing big damage. And this was one of the call centers. This was another one. And I think there's 2 more different pictures, which I'm probably going to save for a video and include some more unseen pictures and videos of these people getting arrested. But look at all of their faces, how scared they were. I think I can see some sort of um, Filipino scammers or from Nepal, which is another thing that we see. It's not always Indian nationals. I mean, there's always other people from across the world sometimes or close to India who come to these call centers, which people don't always understand. And scammers are all over the world, such as the guy I showed earlier. His name was Tyrone. He was in South Africa with that CCTV call center that I investigated. We have scammers in Eastern Europe, scammers in Philippines, scammers everywhere, literally, even in the UK, fraudsters. So I guess just getting everyone arrested, getting everyone investigated has been cool as well.
Must be
But
really
yeah,
rewarding.
this correct. It is rewarding, and it just also shows us that we're not going after just Indians, as people just see on YouTube, Indian scammers getting exposed. There's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes which we can't show or we don't show. And there's much more going on behind the scenes than on YouTube itself. So yeah, that's probably one of my proudest cases. And then finishing it all off, we would map it out somehow. I normally just put it all in a drive or do something simple, but you could also map it out on Multigo. Makes it much more easier. So you'd put the company names they're running, the call center locations, the suspects, how they're related, their roles in the scam. And it's like a mind map, a spider web, which makes things very easy to see. Most of the time when we make these, they just get sent over to law enforcement, or whenever I make a Google Drive, suspect information, victim information, scammers files on the computers, that just gets sent over to law enforcement to see. None of that is kind of posted on YouTube. We obviously censor out victim information for their own safety. We can't really put scammers' information on YouTube as they tend to report it and get it taken down. So law enforcement are the best that deal with this, and it's really organized and nice and tidy for them to take a look at and say, okay, this been this has been a good investigation. Let's take a look at this. Nice and easy for them to read, basically.
I'm a huge fan of Multigo, so really
Yeah,
appreciate like putting that like link analysis chart there and being able to map the entire network and organization is super
yeah,
powerful. And people can very quickly understand like who are the main players, who works there, and then you have all the plugins as well that you could then use for like email enumeration, phone numbers,
yeah,
websites.
correct. So there are loads of like you could do the Bitcoin tracing on Maltego as well, but what you can't do is you can't see kind of if it was a. I think you need to pay or something to see if it was an exchange or whatever it may be, where they withdraw it to. And I don't know, breadcrumbs for me is just much more easier. Cipher Trace is another good one, which is used for Bitcoin tracing. And in terms of getting suspect information, social media profiles, numbers, etc., Social Catfish, who are good friends of mine, and also Scam Betas, they've created an amazing tool which I use. And yeah, but Maltego really does help to make everything kind of um, fit together and organized.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So those are probably the main OSINT techniques I use. Probably the ones that are most efficient in terms of going after scammers and finding what we need to find. I don't think there's much more that we actually need. I don't want to see if someone's got, I don't want to look into someone's personal life, see if they have a degree or see if they've got a cousin here but it's always good to see people if they have degrees. Most of these Eastern European call centers employ people with only degrees, and they employ people that can speak various languages, such as English, German, French, because they would target loads of different countries in Europe to host their fake investment sites on.
That makes
So
sense.
those are cool things to see, but yes, some info is not always needed if it makes sense. But yeah, those tools really cool.
Yeah,
Everyone
for
should go
sure.
check them out if they haven't already. And maybe OSINT UK could um, refer some cool tools that they have as well, which may come in good use for me as well in the scam baiting community.
No, for sure.
Yeah,
Looking at a self plug right now, but I have a OSINT resource document which I host on Google Drive, which is basically just a Google sheet, but there must be north of 1,000 different tools and resources in that. And I know across
yeah,
like the OSINT community, both in the UK and across the world, that there's several of these types of documents and different resources, different tools you can download from GitHub, etc., etc.
correct. Yeah. Oh
Um,
yeah, we could.
that was incredible. I think like it's super interesting to see like the end-to-end process of those investigations and
Yeah,
like the impact you can have as well. I guess like you said, like just, I'm somebody who was affected by this, and now I do this action to stop other people getting hurt by these people, and seeing those impacts, seeing like 200 people detained in a single arrest in a job you're involved in is incredible.
correct. Yeah.
So with that, one question I do have is whether or not you ever worry that the work you do here might come back at some point in real life. And obviously here, like you protect your identity as much as possible. But is that like an ongoing concern? Do you ever worry about like digital footprints and things like that?
Yeah, for sure. It's like right now I can barely breathe in this mask. I keep having to take deep breaths and take deep swallows, and it is something, hiding your identity is needed for sure. Such as real name and face. But I feel like at the end of the day, loads of people are doing this, and the people we're going after, yes, they may be dangerous, but our main goal is to get them put in a place where they can't do this anymore. Um, about my digital footprint, I'm not really scared of scammers because I've seen scammers in person as well. I just feel like in terms of getting identities out there, and if my address got out there, yes, it could be a danger for anyone going after criminals or criminal organizations, but we'll see how it goes, I guess. In the future, maybe I'll reveal my identity, maybe I won't, maybe that I'd have to, maybe it's gonna get leaked. But in terms of being scared, I wouldn't say I'm scared. This is just for my privacy right now. I don't want to be walking down the street and someone says, "Hey, is that Agent G9?" Like, no, let's just get the job done. I don't really
That's
care
fair.
about yeah, I don't really care about social media. Just show what we do on social media, educate the public, save victims, That's the main goal.
I think that's really admirable as well. So I think
Thanks.
I
Yeah.
think you answered basically all the rest of the questions I would have had,
Mhm.
sort of lined up. So I'm gonna see if we've got anything from the chats. I think you just touched on this about whether or not you've ever received actual threats to life for the work that you're doing. But I'm
Um,
assuming at this point the answer is no, because obviously you just said you've taken precautions.
I mean, yeah, we've received lawsuits, me and other scam bases, and cease and desist letters, emails from scammers. I've received a WhatsApp message once from an investment scammer I tried to go for, and he was like, "Oh, I recorded the call. It's going in all of the group chats now. We know your voice. Okay, what can you do in my voice?" But I guess everyone, scammers always threaten people. But you got to remember, at the end of the day, a scam is someone who's sitting in front of their computer trying to take money because they are very greedy for money, and all types of crimes are resolved around some sort of greed, right? Even if it's pedophilia resolving around a sexual greed, or drug dealers resolving around a money greed as well. Everyone's going to be greedy for something. They're going to threaten you regardless of what the crime is.
No, for sure.
But we just keep doing what we do.
Okay, brilliant. Next question. We've got quite a few questions actually. You're a popular chap.
Yeah, I don't
uh,
even see them.
so next question I've got is, how do you originally identify the victims? Do you go like, is it a victim centric approach you're taking, or is it more you go after the call centers first?
So it depends. Sometimes I get emails and others get emails from victims themselves saying, "Hey, can you investigate this group? I've been a victim. Sorry. I've been a victim. I want to see if you can help me get my money back." And we take a look at the group. But we wouldn't ever say to someone, "Yes, we could get your money back." We just take a look at the scam. In other cases, we get access onto a scam call center, and then from there, we see them scamming victims and see them actively doing scams every day and save the victims. So it kind of depends, as you said, the approach is different on the circumstance of how it begins, how it begins, sorry.
No worries. Um, Next question was, how can we work with Agent G9?
How can we work with me in
Yeah,
terms of if you want to collaborate with me and you're a security researcher or a private investigation firm or law enforcement, you could reach me in my email, which is in my channel everywhere, agentg9business@gmail.com. In terms of working, if someone wants to learn what we do, it's not going to happen. But if you want to collaborate or help us, you can most definitely reach out and we'll be willing to connect with more law enforcement or people who have scammers, they have insiders who know of scams. That would be great for sure.
that's interesting. Looking at the next questions I've got. One was around how you got started, which I think we touched on at the beginning.
Yeah.
Um, one here wants to know how G9 gets the tips on the call centers that you watch. I know you reverse connection, but how do you get the tips to watch them? Like, do the scammers call you or others send you the numbers? Which I think, yeah, we just touched on. Sometimes you're proactive in going after somebody. Sometimes it's because you get a tip off.
Yeah, correct. Sometimes we even have friends in India or these places that would go into the call center and run our tool that we use to get connections. And that's another approach, which is quite cool.
Not great. So how long do your investigations take on average? Again, I
I
guess
think I
that's going to be
mentioned,
very depends as well, right?
yeah, it's just dependent on the information we get, how quick we get it, how fast law enforcement are to respond. South Africa have taken probably nearly, oh, it's going to be a year in December, I think. But, someone else like US law enforcement or UK law enforcement, US law enforcement especially, is very good at what they do. They go quick. They do a lot of damage. Um, Pakistan law enforcement, I think someone's worked with them. I'm not too sure about that side and the details, but UK law enforcement, they do damage as well. Just takes time talking with them. I think now we're currently looking for a law enforcement contact in the UK. So if anyone knows anyone in the UK who could reach out to us and help us, willing to take down scammers, for sure it'd be great.
I'm sure there's
Indian law
somebody.
enforcement, mm,
There's going to be somebody in the UK
yeah,
OSINT community who might be able to put you in touch with the right person.
correct. That would be great. So thanks for that. But Indian law enforcement, they used to take long, but now they're quite good and quite swift. And they're slowly starting to help us as well, which is great. So big shout out to India as well.
Not great. Next question I've got here is how many investigations result in arrests? I guess that's a difficult one to
Okay.
answer as well, right?
Yeah, it's quite difficult. Before when we didn't really have law enforcement contacts, we would report something and we wouldn't ever hear anything back from it. Um, but now that we have law enforcement contacts, a lot of things I do off YouTube get somewhere. There's an investigation or there's individuals arrested, part of a big crime group or a scam ring, and sometimes I just I think one of my previous videos where I would report their information and nothing would be done, I just decide to expose them myself to maybe put some fear in them or maybe give them like a notice, an alert saying, look, I'm watching you, stop what you're doing. Here's a picture of your face, here's your address. Sometimes that's why we just go and expose them. It's not always because we want to do it for YouTube, but sometimes law enforcement don't do anything after we report them, so we have to get them ourselves.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Um, so, do you think in some countries the convictions are too lenient? And after having done all the work and then the scammer gets like a light sentence, do you think
Yeah,
that sentences should be harsher?
for sure. I do think that because I saw something the other day, the UK released loads of prisoners because of overcrowding. In some cases, it's they get a slap on the wrist or they pay bail and they get out. What I think the judge needs to also understand is somebody's whole life could be ruined through what they do. And as you touched on earlier, yes, people have killed themselves. People do lose their houses. People do end up in losing their family, getting divorces. Sometimes people just lose everything and it's still heartbreaking. So punishment for scammers should be up there, quite high. Realizing people just scam just to get money, to buy materialistic stuff, buy a yacht, buy a car, whatever it may be, or put the money into legitimate business. At the end of the day, yes, they deserve to get big punishment because people's lives are getting ruined the same way other crimes ruins people's lives too.
I apologise if you can hear Monty barking in the background.
Oh no, it's good.
He picks his moments. So, the next question we had was whether or not you use Multigo solely for mapping, or if you use some of those sort of paid integrations into that tool.
Um, no, so Martigo, I never use Martigo to be honest. It's mainly just the end of kind of showcase to the whole investigation. Tools I touched on before, getting victim information, getting scammers information, doing personal investigations, that's what we mainly do. But when we um package it up and send it off to law enforcement, we need to be we need to give them something that makes sense. We can't just say this is this, which we got from here, and give them like an essay of how we did it. Give them a nice, easy mind map to read, spider web, whatever it may be, and just give it to them. But no, I do not use Maltego solely.
Okay, interesting. I guess also like a lot of the integrations like are quite expensive. I guess as a lone
Correct. Yeah.
scam beta, it's probably quite difficult to go and justify the cost of a lot of those integrations to really get the full value out of it.
Yeah, like CipherTrace costs, I think, around $10,000 or something to get an to get them to respond to you and get an investigation on the Bitcoin wallet. But as I just showed, breadcrumbs shows you the same result. However, you don't get the end result, or you need law enforcement to help you with it to see where the criminal is on the other end getting the money. Um, yeah, scam baiters don't really have tools, and we don't really have big budget. No one's paying us at the moment. No one's paying us to do this.
Yeah.
I've been doing this for free for about 2 years with no YouTube channel. My YouTube channel started a year ago, and that's where I get my support from. So I'm thankful for all my fans and everyone that's subscribed. But most of the time, it's just we can't like invest. We can't make a big investment if that makes sense. So if these companies wanted to work with us, it would be great. Um, People that do work with us, bank representatives and law enforcement, and certain companies already do, such as AnyDesk, they would help out. Um, but yeah, just more companies that want to work with us would be better, I guess.
Yeah, I've seen some of that before. Like, you were part of the People's Call Center,
Yeah,
and seeing like some of those commercial providers coming together and helping, like, on a focused effort to target the scammers was really like interesting to me. And sort of
yeah,
seeing that collaboration like in person and well documented is incredible.
yeah. So AnyDesk were there. So scammers use AnyDesk a lot for remote screen sharing, and also, they have different permissions on there. So AnyDesk came to the People's Call Center, and AnyDesk do work with scam baiters to help stop scams, save victims, shut down call centers that may use AnyDesk. They turn off their connection on AnyDesk, and then the scammer in India is no longer able to use AnyDesk. They'd have to go onto something else, and they do do a lot. I think AnyDesk are probably the only screen share software which are trying to fight against scammers.
That's surprising because you'd imagine some of the larger players as well. You'd imagine should be a bit more supportive, but I guess at the end of the day, there's also a large share
Yeah,
of their market is probably those people that are
I
using
mean,
it illegally.
true. I mean, I know we do have some reps over at ConnectWise who help. Um, where else? I think Zoho Assist are also in this chat. But it's like other companies like Ultraviewer. No one's heard back from Ultraviewer. Wonder why? Do some investigation into the company and you'll find out why. But we're really grateful for anyone willing to help with investigations and with stopping scams in general. It makes a big impact. Even though it may seem small, over time it makes a big impact. And yeah,
Okay, awesome. Next question I've got here is whether or not you know where or how Eastern European scammers are recruiting phoners.
so they just put like job applications up. They need people to work at an office who speak English or other languages better. We had an insider go into a call center, get a job in Eastern Europe, and they just require you to speak loads of different languages, speak well, be good at sales, be good at persuading, manipulation. Um, but yeah, it's the same as Indian, I guess. They just put job applications up, or they have their own secret Facebook, WhatsApp groups where they recruit each other.
So do you think there's an instance where people get these jobs, don't necessarily know that they're conducting scams, or do you think it doesn't take a genius to work that out?
Mm. I think in one instance, there was a lady in South Africa, the people I did investigate, and she reached out to me after I exposed them. And she said, yes, all of us got fired from the boss after your video and after the police came to see us, but I never knew what I was doing was a scam. She thought she was just helping a victim get that money back. She told me she never worked in a financial institution before or sort of a money moving business, which requires some sort of um, accounting or payments providers getting done. She told me she was just told what to do in her contract. It said, and I read this in her contract, it said, after a sale is made, we like there's another team that deals with the victim. So sometimes they don't know what they're doing, but as you said, it doesn't require a genius to figure out, okay, so let me put the dots together. Let me see the reviews online on where I'm working. No one's been getting their money back. So what am I actually doing? And sometimes I guess people are just desperate for money. Like everyone who got fired from this call center came back to me. Probably about half of them said, look, I rent due this month. I didn't get paid after I got fired. I need to pay my rent. I've got kids to feed. So people just take a job, but I'd say just look at what you're taking. Look at the job role. You don't want to end up working 5, 6 years in a business which you're gonna realize, okay, I'm not doing no good. And yeah, just try look at where you're working, I guess. And it's just, in my opinion, it's common sense. You could tell, but the scam bosses do kind of make it seem like it's a legitimate business, or scammers always want to seem legitimate, run under a legit company, and do all of these things to seem real.
It's quite interesting seeing that it's almost like they're scamming the people that work for them as well, in some ways.
Yeah, they
And
are, which
also,
is crazy.
it shows that actually a lot of the countries where you're operating as well, like the economy is not very strong. There is a lot of
Yeah,
poverty. People are desperate for work or desperate for the opportunity to earn some money and provide. And it's one of those things where if you go down the food chain, you can't really blame these people themselves. It's the people higher up than them who know exactly what they're doing. And, just
yeah,
because these people are desperate for money or desperate for the opportunity to provide for their families, there is a whole food chain. And I guess very similar in a lot of ways to like the drug industry as well. You think like you have
yeah,
the big cartels, but actually when you get down to the farmers, they're just trying to provide. And it's the same sort of
correct.
approach.
Yeah, you're perfectly right when you say that because most of the time these bosses also underpay their workers. I put in my previous video, the boss said every 5,000 US dollars that you take from a victim or from a client, as they said, you would get 1,200 Rand or something, South African Rand. So 1,200 Rand is equal to $130. So $130, the victim loses $5,000, the boss gets $4,800. So yes, they are scamming their own people. It is sad. People need to get away from these scam bosses telling them what to do, how to do it, and realize, okay, this is a scam because they're getting scammed themselves.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
But hearing those numbers and then seeing the how disparate they are and how different like it works out is quite shocking, really.
yeah. But at the end of the day, regardless of who you are, if you're a scammer, there's no sympathy, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. So next question I've got here is: can law enforcement use the data you obtain through like unauthorized access of phones and computers? I know here in the UK it's quite difficult for police to use that sort of
Yeah.
information, but I guess internationally jurisdictions are different, laws are different. So quite interesting to see like how you find that process.
So it's not really giving them evidence, right? It's giving them intelligence to work from. So we'd say, okay, I heard this guy is running this call center, or I know this call center's over here running a scam. We wouldn't give them evidence to use in court. And they wouldn't always just take our evidence. They'd obviously do their own research, but we're just here giving them the word, okay, this needs to get investigated. Don't tell anyone. Or sometimes there's a call center here, they're not gonna use what we give them as evidence. It's not like they're just taking it straight from us. They use it as intelligence, and we kind of collaborate with them. Same way non-profit organizations such as Shadow Server collaborate with law enforcement or whoever it may be and help take down certain, malware distributors, botnets, all sorts of things going on in the dark web and online with data leaks and anything basically. You just do the same thing.
Yeah, it's all about. I know in the UK, it's all about if you can parallel the evidence. So
Yeah,
you might have something which has been obtained on it, for example, from like a data breach of a service provider,
yeah,
and that data breach might only be available in certain underground forums or marketplaces where you have to pay for access, which is something that most law enforcement agencies here can't really do because of funding crime.
right, yeah,
But then at the same time, it's like, well, okay, well, if we can use, is there anything there that we could then use as information to go and do something else? And if you can turn around
yeah,
as I guess, an intelligence source and say, well, I've got this information, and you have this individual lives at this address, then okay, well, that we have reason to believe that they might be involved in something. Can we then do other investigative measures to further this, I guess, investigation?
yeah. That's totally right. But they always do their own investigation after we may give them something. It's like an informant on the street or someone reporting a crime, giving them information saying, look, someone down there with that number plate just took my phone and ran off. Okay, are they going to go run after them? Or are they going to say, okay, wait, let me see if there's actually someone there. Let me see if there's actually someone there with that number plate, speeding away or looking suspicious. They would do it on the online side in terms of let's look at who these people are. Are they paying their taxes? Are they avoiding taxes, staying at these buildings? What type of people are they recruiting? What are they doing inside? What are they doing on their computers? Are they doing legitimate calls or are they calling people pretending to be from the bank? It's all the same thing. It's like, I guess it's kind of being an informant, or I don't know what the other word is, where you kind of just, give them the little nudge and say, look, this is going on.
Yeah, that makes sense. You're almost like an intelligence source rather than like,
Yeah.
yeah, here's an entire folder of everything you ever need. Go and kick a door in.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, we don't have privileges and we don't have legal rights to go kick a door down and arrest someone, even though we'd love to do it. And there's plenty of people who've got away without getting caught that we know of. We're not entitled to do any of this. And this is why we need law enforcement contacts, bank contacts, all sorts of, contacts at any desk to help us. We need all sorts of contacts to come together and figure out a way to stop scams and crime going on.
I, for one, am all in on that video where you're going in through the door.
Yeah, no, it would be a great video, but it's something that YouTube would probably take that down, I guess, depending on
Probably.
what you do once you're in there.
I'm here today with the NCA. We're kicking in a door.
Yeah. No, the NCA do a lot of good jobs as well. I think so I spoke with some UK law enforcement, and a couple of months later, the NCA ran an operation where they took down some online cybercrime people that were running like a spoofing service and fake phishing sites where you could host them. So I'm all in for the NCA in the UK. I think we just need more collaboration and more efficiency with being fluid and being more kind of talkative with them, especially in the UK law enforcement, the whole scene.
For sure. So I think we're starting to come towards the end now. You'll be pleased to know.
Yeah.
Next question I've got for
Finally, I
you.
can take this all on.
I assume investment scammers have learned about how to do their business partly online. Do you know of any forums dedicated to learning about crypto scams? because it might be useful for an investigation I'm conducting, and that was from Valdemar.
Think on Trustpilot, right? You can see loads of bad reviewed FX markets, trading, forex, all of these words in a website, in a domain, reviewed very badly with people sharing their experiences, even on online on other scam. I think what's it called? It's called scam something. I need to check the name, but it's like
Scam
it's
Advisor
like
or
a scam
something.
report. Scam advisor, yes, that's it. Scam advisor. You just see these different forex and markets and Bitcoin traders, fake investment websites. So just go do your own research. That's how we get them as well.
Yeah, I think that what's really
Quantum AI
interesting
is
with
a big
that
one.
is you can also
Yeah,
use services like URL scan, and then you can see
correct. Yeah.
other similar web pages, and that will give you a
Yeah,
whole
so you
bunch
can,
of domains using the same HTML code and
correct.
stuff.
Yeah, you could scan for certain hashes on URL scan, certain keywords, as you said, it would give you loads of them. But I think sometimes there's some legit companies. So as I said, doing your own research is important, which is what we always do. We don't hack a legit company at the end of the day and end up investigating the wrong people.
Not for sure. Um, so, are there any particular resources that you really enjoy? Obviously, you mentioned like Social Catfish, PimEyes, Yandex for images as well. But is there
Yeah.
anything else that you would really recommend for like trying to improve or advance like your OSINT skills or your OSINT understanding? And like always, any other sort of OSINT tools that you use on a regular basis?
Um, so there's not much OSINT tools. Um, when we're on a scamming system or phone, we're able to just see a lot of stuff that goes on. I'd say we use more kind of we use a lot of things for network and um, pivoting around computers on Kali Linux, which is filled with Metasploit, Meterpreter, and things you can learn on Kali. But in terms of OSINT tools, I think those are probably the main ones which we use in our investigations for scam baiting. Scam baiters also play a role, right? So many scam baiters call us an old person or like a character. So they would use voice changes and it'd be quite funny, quite cool. So probably just in terms of OSINT, nothing else, but that's probably the other thing I use a voice changer and um yeah.
So it's like that early. You tend to use the OSINT in that early stage. Can we identify some information about a business that we think is suspicious? And then I guess further from that, it's right. We've got this information now. Right? Is there anything that we can use with OSINT to confirm what we think, or confirm like the locations, or like the people?
Right. So for OSINT on a business, we would probably just start early as possible. We'll try to see who's working there, where the building is, if they run under a different company name, if the people working there have different names, such as the South Africa one I investigated, they didn't use different names, which made me think, okay, is this legitimate? But then I started looking at victims and we did some OSINT on victims. We called the victims, we asked them, we talked to them, hey, what's going on? No one's been getting their money back. Everyone tells us, I worked with this company, they didn't pay me back, they didn't recover any of my money. Same thing for Indian scammers, right? Well, it's quite dead obvious if there's a scam. If someone's telling you to go withdraw $50,000 and someone's going to come pick it up from you, where does this actually imply to real life scenarios? Why would someone need to come pick up 2 kg of golden bars from your house? It's because they were manipulated in doing so. So most of most of these cases are obvious that they're scams, I guess.
Yeah, that makes sense. Um, I guess finally, this is an interesting question. I think. Do you think there's any value in having like former scam employees like joining like the cyber industry, or do you think like by the point they've already been involved in scamming for like a period, like the I guess their baseline level of ethics might be too much of a concern? But then I think if I think about it, I think about all the people that are black hat hackers when they're quite young and either get told off by the police or they decide actually they want to go into cybersecurity, so they stop doing bad things and become like white hat hackers or I guess pen testers, ethical hackers, etc. But it'd be really interested to see like your take on that because you come at this from a slightly different angle, I guess, from what most people watching this would probably know in their jobs.
Yeah, no, I agree with you because there's some people that I know who used to be black hats or they used to do something bad and they've openly said it as well. Um, don't want to say any names, but there's people who have done that and then they've, kind of turned aside to using what they did as good. They didn't do anything crazy, let's say, but they used to do some bad stuff. But in terms of a scammer in a call center giving us information, yes, we could help a scammer who go, tell them to go into a place, but I don't think we'd ever let a scammer work with us because their capabilities and we don't really know anyone as a person. Maybe one day you decide to go back to scamming and use everything we've given you in a bad way, right? But
Yeah,
there are people who used to be black hat hackers, and there are people who just went straight from um, being educated as white hat hackers to doing good, which is probably the best thing. But I think in terms of all of that, it's just working with white hat hackers is what we do. You see if someone's genuine, you see if someone does the right thing, calls victims, works with law enforcement. Law enforcement know your name regardless. Um, yeah, you just see what someone does and if they're trustworthy, I guess. That's why scam bait is kind of we built a community of not just anyone, right? Of people that are trustworthy and we've seen each other in person. We've seen each other save millions of dollars and victims and whatever it may be. So yeah, that's about it. I can't say much on that.
no, that's interesting. It's really like just seeing like because of this slightly different angle. It's really fascinating to me to sort of see that point of view. Um,
Yeah, no, I think many people have there's been many black hats. Being an ethical hacker, you always run into black hat hackers and people who distribute malware to for the wrong reasons. And on forums, I'm always seeing these black hat hackers. And whenever I try to learn about something on YouTube, sometimes if I'm learning a new framework or um, a new tool that may be useful, there's always like black hat hackers commenting under it. But I think it's just I just ignore them. I just keep in my circle with the trusted scam baiters. We're all good people here. I know we've all worked with law enforcement, done good things.
that's fantastic. I want to thank you for your time because this has been a really interesting conversation. I've taken a lot out of this, and I think everyone who's been watching will take a lot out of this and sort of seeing the scale and the scope of this kind of work and the level of the impact it can have, I think is incredible. So the last thing I
Yeah.
guess for us is how can we connect with you online, and do you have any projects coming up that you particularly like to push, or are we just driving people towards YouTube?
Well, yeah, you could go on YouTube, Agent G9, but if there's any law enforcement out there or any ex-scammers or people who want to give info and help us take down criminals, Agent G9 business at gmail.com, or you could send me a DM on any of my social medias and my YouTube channel description, and we could get connected and try to do some good things. But yeah,
Incredible.
thanks a lot to the UK OSINT community. It was cool getting in touch with you guys, and we can learn from each other as well. As we said, we could discuss some things and yeah, help each other out.
I'm sure. I'm sure there's people in the community that will be very keen to either provide some sort of data access or maybe
Yeah,
some kind of insight into some of the investigative stuff that you're doing. And we're all about the collaboration and being driving force for OSINT for
exactly. Yeah,
good in the UK. So thank you
yeah, that's
again.
great.
Um,
Thanks a lot.
for everybody else, our next webinar is this coming Wednesday. I'm talking with Joshua Richards from the OSINT group about how he uses OSINT to look at individuals on the FBI and similar agencies' most wanted lists, which is another really interesting conversation that I'm sure people are going to take a lot out of as well. But that's all for us for now. Agent G9, thank you. And to everyone watching,
Thanks a lot, sir.
thank you.
Thank you. Bye.